Well, good morning, everyone, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this first ever Building Life Science Adventures conference that One Nucleus has brought together with the help of our sponsors, supporters, panelists, and of course, delegates that have made that possible. For me, I guess more than ever, our sector's been in the spotlight this last year and shown really what it has potential to do, both to improve better outcomes for patients, and that's on a global scale, how it collaborates, the variety of roles, and actually the importance to society as a whole of how we manage to combat things like pandemics. So it's a really exciting time for the sector. But even before that, and it's been thriving for a long time, the life science sector, I was hearing continually from our member companies their concerns around recruiting the best teams and the best talent and helping develop their staff. And equally, I was hearing from those in university or early in their careers asking questions about what opportunities within the sector were available to them and what works and what doesn't. So that was the motivation for One Nucleus to create this conference with a series of panels over the next 2 days, looking at different aspects about what works and what doesn't work, what opportunities there are, and particularly as we move into the first session, we'll look at that very topical matter of mentoring and what that means, when it's effective, how do you make the most of it. And I guess ideally out of that, what we would like to see from a One Nucleus perspective amongst our community and ecosystem is just sharing of good practice and what people find to work, because they don't compete necessarily on who has the best mentoring approach within a company or how they do that. It's about they compete on their technologies and products. But collectively as a sector, the closer we get to being the best employers we can be, then I think everybody benefits from that pool. So that's the reasoning behind Building Life Science Adventures. This is exciting. I do see it as an adventure building their career. If we could just ask people to stay on mute if they're not on the panel speaking, that would be great. And so I guess that's a good cue from me. So without further ado, just some housekeeping during the sessions. If you could place questions or comments in the chat box as you go along, that will be able to be seen by Maria, who's moderating the panel, but also by the other panelists who may wish to comment on some of those and work them into the conversation as they go. And then we'll come more openly back to those questions from the chat box as time allows towards the session progresses. So from me, I hope you all have a good couple of days. I'm really looking forward to this first panel around the importance of mentoring. I'm going to hand over to Maria Herver from Charles River Laboratories, who's going to moderate the next hour or so. I shall see you later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. I'm very excited to be here in the inaugural session of this career conference. It's very exciting, and we have a wonderful panel of people to talk about mentoring and what that means and what can bring to the table. So I will start by introducing myself. I'm Maria Herva. I work in Charles River, so that's a contract research organization. In here, I'm a group leader, so I lead a group of people, and also I manage scientific projects. Before Charles River, I was working in AstraZeneca, and before that, I was in academia. So on top of being a scientist, I'm also very passionate about people development and helping people move in their careers and find opportunities to progress. And that's what linked me to One Nucleus and to try and participate in this event. So the rest of the panels bring a lot of expertise also to the table. So we have two people who actually, their day-to-day is actually to train, to coach, to develop people. A couple of us, we are doing that within our organizations, and then we also have a person who is a mentee, so it brings the other perspective of the whole experience. So without further ado, I will just pass to them so that they can introduce themselves. So Elizabeth, would you go first, please?
Thank you, Maria, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this panel. It's a topic that I believe is extremely important. So as you mentioned, yes, my role, I founded Rivery in 2009, and then since 2011-ish, I think I've been working with One Nucleus, and we do training for managers and teams, and increasingly we do coaching as well. And one of the things that might be interesting to explore is the difference between coaching and mentoring. Is there a difference, and what is that? So yeah, before Riverie, I was working in pharma, mainly in GSK and legacy companies. So I've got direct experience of working there as well. And that's probably enough for starters.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Alex, you're next on my screen.
Awesome, thank you. Hi, Ron. My name's Alex. I'm part of Farron Pharmaceuticals, so we're a small biotech in the southwest of Finland. Geography isn't really important to where we are, but we do some good science here. My role here is in business development and licensing, so that's where I work. But before this, I came from, I was working in sales, and then, so I'm a direct benefit of mentoring per se. So I've got a great mentor here at Farron, so that's where my expertise comes into this conversation. So thank you.
Thanks, Alex. David?
Yeah, thanks, Mario. Morning, everybody. My name is David. I'm currently Chief of Staff at a small CRO called DomainX. So in that role, I'm responsible for linking how we deal with the kind of business aspects as to also how that fits together with all the staff aspects. So working very closely with both aspects of the business. Also head up the biology function as well. So a foot in both camps in terms of science and business. I've previously spent 15 years within Charles River, and then prior to that, some time in big pharma and also within the biotech sector. During those years, I've led people, I've coached people, I've been a mentor and a mentee. So it'll be good to see how the discussion goes today, and looking forward to an interesting conversation.
Thank you, David. And Jeroen?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Jeroen. I'm the Training and Development Manager at the Norwich Biosciences Institute. So that's sort of a partnership of 4 institutes: the Quadro Institute, John Innes Center, the Earlham Institute, and the Sainsbury's Laboratory. Before that, I worked sort of within the NHS and at the Medical Research Council, but always in a sort of organizational development training role, sort of quite a lot of experience of, again, coaching, getting coaches sort of in, doing coaching myself, and organizing mentoring. So from very strict and very sort of formal mentoring programs to much more informal mentoring. And I've done mentoring myself, and I've been a mentee myself as well. So I'm really looking forward to the general discussion we're going to have today about mentoring sort of within the scientific world.
Fantastic, thank you very much. So I think we can probably start talking about those definitions and what it means. So what's a mentorship, what's coaching, and also I would also drop another one in there, which is sponsorships. So I think that those 3 things are very much linked and intervene, but there are subtle differences. So Elizabeth, would you like to start, for example, commenting on that?
Thank you. I sort of set myself up for that one, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
We were talking about definitions in another context yesterday, and what I'd like to offer first of all is that there isn't a clean line between each of them. It will blur, it will vary. Very, very broadly, the difference between mentoring and coaching is that, I guess as a coach, you're looking to draw out what knowledge someone has within themselves. You may not have expertise in whatever it is the individual is wanting to develop their skills and knowledge around. Whereas as a mentor, you're more likely to have that skill and expertise to pass on. But I say straight away, the lines will be blurred and fuzzy.
Mm-hmm. Jeroen, would you like to comment also on that, being the other expert coach in the room?
Well, no, I would sort of agree with that. I think the skills that underlie, sort of both mentors and coach, I think are very similar in terms of, questioning skills, listening skills. But I agree. I think a mentor tends to have some of that expertise more. There will be more guiding, more sort of advice giving, I suppose. A coach, like Elizabeth said, doesn't necessarily need to know anything really about the sort of context in which you work. And I tend to find coaching, the way we use it, is much more specific. So I think, someone comes, we establish what the issue is or what they want to work on, and then there'll be quite a set period in which that happens. Whereas suppose for mentoring, again, that can be much more fluid. I think you can be mentored on a specific issue or topic, and that might be over a few months, and there's mentoring relationships that go on for sort of years. And then I think picking up the point you said for sort of sponsorship, that to me is almost the next step of mentoring. So rather than just sort of the advice giving and meeting up, I think you're then actively getting involved with someone's career, and you might take them along to meetings you go to, you might take them along to board meetings you go to, you might introduce them actively sort of to your network. So I think again, that is about really promoting someone and getting them further ahead.
Yeah, I think that for me, the sponsorship, it's a figure that can also kind of sit depending on where you are, either as a mentor that actually develop into providing that extra support and bringing the mentee with you, but also a good manager, for example, should also be your sponsor, someone that finds you the opportunities and put you in the spotlight, also to give you the chance of progressing and so on. So it's yeah, it can be like a movable figure. So Alex, where do you see your mentoring? What is that figure to you? How did you find your mentor, and how is that going for you?
I think for me, I found my mentor. I knew I worked well, so my relationship with my mentor came from my previous role. I knew of him, and we just got speaking, and I realised that we saw the world in a very similar light. And so I kind of hacked him out as my mentor and told him he was going to be it. So I kind of chose my mentor for myself and found someone who had, for me, found someone who I knew would see what I could do and take me as an unpolished rock and make me what I want to be. I didn't know what I could be, but I needed someone to get that out of me. So for me, it sits on all three of the mentor, coach, and sponsor at once. So, and I think that's where it kind of works really well, that it was a bit serendipitous as well.
Okay, so how do the rest of the people think that mentorships are normally forged? Are they kind of normally something that appears kind of fluidly, like in Alex's scenario, or are you also kind of comfortable with kind of these matched mentorship schemes?
I think it very much depends on the organizations. I think some organizations kind of have this structured, what skills are you kind of looking to pick up, and then trying to pair those people that are similarly aligned within the organization. Now, whether they're necessarily the most successful ones, I think is difficult to say, because you don't always have the personal relationship with the individual that you're matched with. Whereas I think Alex hit the nail on the head there. It's somebody that he already knew, and that somebody he could communicate with and trusted. And they're probably where it's most valuable. They shouldn't be seen as hierarchical. So whilst people would associate being mentoring with a more senior figure, but it could be a particular skill that you need to learn, and somebody lower in the structure, for want of a better word, is the person to provide that guidance to you. So I think part of it, is really, who can you talk to? Who do you trust? Who can you build that relationship with, that you can be open? Because that's when it's most productive, is when you can openly discuss ideas without fear of thinking you're being viewed as being daft.
Yeah.
I'm going to put myself on mute because the dogs are thinking they want to mentor next door's cat at the moment. So I'm going to be quiet.
Any other comments in there?
Marie, I'm wondering whether, I know that One Nucleus has been doing a poll about the pros and cons, or the advantages of external and internal mentors. And I wondered whether I could comment on that based on what David was just saying, and Alex, actually, because I was hearing, this issue of trust being really important, and the benefit of, if your mentor knows you well, then they can sort of draw out your strengths and also help you with your challenges. And I was wondering whether any of the other panelists have encountered situations where maybe there are advantages of having an external mentor because they would be taking a more objective view of you and they wouldn't have all that baggage of your history. They'd be sort of seeing you afresh, not having that prejudgment in terms of how they work with you. And I wondered whether that was something that people might have experienced or might resonate.
Yes, so in my past employment, I was assigned a much senior person to be my mentor. It was someone that I had met a couple of times in very formal settings, so I didn't really have any personal relationship or any knowledge of that person. But when we had and he was sitting in a different country, so it was also an online meetup that we were doing, our catch-ups. So it felt a bit forced at the beginning, but then because he was not in my department, he was not in my line, all the conversations were much more open. I didn't have the feeling that anything that I would say in there might, pass down or leak out of those doors. It felt very safe, and he was giving me very honest advice in terms of how to progress my career, what were my options within the organization, but also outside of the organization. And it actually helped me making some decisions that then brought me to where I am now. So I really valued that kind of completely impartial view and expertise that he was sharing with me. Jeroen?
Yeah, I would sort of agree. I think there's something about what you want to get, from a mentor, or even we talked a little bit about coaching. What do you sort of want to get from it? And I think that can help you drive whether to go external or internal. I mean, obviously, if you go external, like you said, you can sometimes be more open with people as well because they don't sort of know some of the politics. There's no fear, if that's the right word, of some of it maybe coming back to your manager or other sort of team members. So I think for some people that in itself stimulates a bit of openness in itself. But I think also at the same time, having people that do understand that context and do understand perhaps the structures of the institute or the organization where you work can also help. So I think it's for yourself also deciding what do you want to get out of a mentoring relationship and structuring that a little bit. So it should be something that is fairly free flowing, but I think where I've been involved in more structured approaches, there's also sometimes something about actually what do you want to get from it, and how do we then sort of help you with that? Because otherwise it sometimes becomes a bit of you just have a coffee, you maybe have a bit of a moan, or you just have a bit of a catch up, and that sort of continues without really any progress or any goal. So I think it sometimes helps if there's a slightly more formalized structure to get people to think about, why do I want this mentor? What do I want to get out of this? How often are we going to sort of meet? And then where do I get to? And that then can help inform whether it's better to have someone external or internal. And I think within science, I appreciate within sort of industry that there is some things around confidentiality, but certainly within science, I find it's a very open approach. I think a lot of this sort of work and the development, especially for sort of younger career scientists, is very much around for the benefit of science. So I think it's, people are very open and usually very willing to mentor, even if people do come from sort of outside. So I think taking that opportunity and using that to your advantage can also help.
Mm-hmm. So I see there's a question in the chat box from Claire. So how can undergraduates wishing to go into industry find industrial mentors?
I'll take this one because, no offense, I'm also the youngest here, so I was only doing my undergraduate a few years ago, so I'll take that one. I think with this one, as an undergraduate, you've got to set yourself out from everyone else who's vying for those people in there. And if we look at the UK, which I presume is where most of the people here are listening from, you've got a really good life science sector. You've got hubs in London, Oxford, Cambridge. You're now getting them up north in Sheffield and so on and so forth. And I would say that you need to have the courage to both look internally at your university lectures and find the people who have had industry experience. So I did my bachelor's at Sheffield Hallam, and I went to the person who worked back in the day at British Biotech that turned into Nucleus, that then got acquired, I believe. And I said to him, I want to learn more about industry. And so I spent I said and so I wouldn't let him go until he told me everything he knew about it. And then I started reaching out to people in industry and saying, hey, what do you think about this? And eventually I got caught up with people in industry. So I'd make yourself known, I'd make yourself known to anyone in the industry, and find your mentor yourself, and just keep going until you find someone that you can actually have a conversation with.
The other thing to leverage in that space is the industry bodies. So particularly in the UK, organisation called LRIG, so ELRIG, they run a lot of early career professionals events, and that gives you access to not only early career professionals but also established people within the industry. Conferences are all free to attend, and they often do networking sessions there for you to build those relationships. So Claire, I think that, and everybody that's out there, if you're looking to build those networks, then look for these industry bodies that have that early career professional framework in place, to help you build the networks out, because the only way you're going to find a network in the industrial space, a mentor in the industrial space, is to have the networks. And I think everyone around the table would agree that probably who you know is sometimes more important than what you know.
Absolutely. And there is also one more answer that came actually through the chat box, which is the use of LinkedIn and Twitter as great networking tools. So I was just going to comment on LinkedIn. So I know it's not that used maybe by undergrads, but it's a fantastic tool for professional networking. And it is a very good way of actually following people or following various companies and organizations, and a way of actually starting meeting people. And you can just go to them and straight ask, like, I'm interested in your career, in how you got there. I would like to maybe meet you. Can we have a chat and start that relationship as easy as that? Of course, not everybody would be open to do that, but it's a way to go. Elizabeth, you were going to comment, sorry.
I was just wondering actually whether there was a route through One Nucleus, and I see that Dave Graham has posted a note about student membership of One Nucleus. So I'm wondering whether actually there might be a route to connect with mentors that way as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then many universities are actually starting to offer mentorship programs. So I currently started a mentorship relationship with a postdoc in the University of Cambridge that was actually done through one of these matching programs. So
I think,
yeah.
So yeah, no, just a bit, because I think like David said, it's checking, even if you are sort of in academia or more research institutes. I think there's so much more cross-working nowadays. Research institutes, universities, they work with industry partners. So I think you'll probably find that a lot of your lecturers will already have some of those sort of contacts and can put you in touch with people. So I think it's very much using that. I think the point you were making at the end, Marie, about sort of formalized programs, because I think that sometimes can take out some of that spontaneity that we were talking about earlier, which is important. But I think it does sometimes level the playing field a little bit. It can help, perhaps the people that do find that networking or putting themselves out there a bit more difficult. I would explore some of those, because they're quite formalized structures. Then you sort of get the introduction. People have already sort of said they are happy to mentor. So that might be an easier step. But again, on the whole, I would say that the science world, in its broader sort of context, is very open. So most people, if you approach them, will at least be happy to have a quick email exchange with you, or give you a few sort of hints or tips, or have a quick sort of hour. I think it's unlikely for people to really give a flat no. And even if they do, they might at least be able to sort of give you some hints and tips. So it can be quite hard, but sort of do try. But yeah, do find out some of the more formalized schemes as well if you feel a bit more nervous about doing that.
Actually, I was quite surprised by the degree of good matching that they accomplish with these things, because it's not just that. So in these programs, they ask you a lot of questions, both when you are going to be a mentor and when you are applying as a mentee, in terms of what you bring to the table as a mentor and what you are looking for in a mentor. And you can actually drill to a lot of kind of detail and actually get a very good match in terms of what you want. So the person I did match with, she was looking for a female mentor in industry who was a mom, because she was looking to get a lot of feedback and experience in terms of a woman progressing through their career. So that type of detail is actually something that you can achieve with this type of kind of match mentorship scheme. So it was actually quite interesting to see how well paired we were.
And I think, just to sort of add to that, I think it comes back to the point I made earlier about being quite clear about what you want from that as well. So you can't just get in touch with someone and say, it would be really nice just to have a coffee because I really just want to have a chat. It's, have some questions ready that show you've sort of thought about what you want to get from them and why you approach them. So it's not like, well, I approached 10 people and you were the one that happened to sort of email back. Think about, why are you approaching this person? What is it that they do that interests you? And do a bit of that sort of digging before you then get in touch with someone.
So then maybe we can comment about what is in this mentorship kind of relationship for the mentor. What's that we get when we are mentoring people? Who's going to take that one?
I always
Do you want me to go first? Oh, sorry, David.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's very much a two-way process, because although you might initially start off with that, mentor-mentee relationship, as you start to work with individuals, it's very quickly those kind of boundaries get blurred, and because it is an open discussion, over time, I think it becomes much more on parity, actually, and by questioning your own understanding as you work with somebody, you start to learn yourself. So don't always, I would say to any mentee, you just realize you go into that relationship having an equal set of things you can offer to your mentor, and the mentor be open to accepting that you don't know everything.
I'll echo what David said, and I think the first time my mentor said to me that he was my mentor, and he kind of realized that we were in the sauna together, and we were pretty drunk at the time. We just said to each other, it's really nice to see how far you've come. And I think in terms of being open and honest and with each other, you can't get more honest than in a sauna where you're naked together, so you can't honestly hide. So for me, the thing for him was, look, when I first started being mentored, it took a lot of effort into me, but now it comes back to, I give a lot of effort to him, and he now gets to go, oh, I actually don't know everything, and now he gets pushed himself to go out and find out what's going on. So he now gets pushed as a leader even further than what he would have done had he not had me, is his way of seeing it. So he gets pushed as a manager, he gets pushed as a leader, and he gets pushed as a mentor to be better.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think I would sort of echo all of those. And I think mentor, it's very useful. I think especially once you get more senior, to sort of surround yourself with your sort of peers, and you do lose that touch a little bit. So I think actually having those insights from on the ground a little bit more, if that's sort of the right word, I think is really useful, and people really sort of appreciate that. And I think they are often in charge is not quite the word, but they do sort of dictate things a little bit more. So I think seeing how what it's like at the moment for younger researchers and getting that insight is really useful. And of course, there's I know that's not quite the objective here, but there are what we call sort of reverse mentoring programs. And when I worked in the NHS, they're really sort of big on those, where I think they've recognized the usefulness of some of these relationships, and they actually deliberately put people, especially from minority sort of groups, females, ethnic minorities, in touch with more senior leaders to get them that understanding of what it's like to work in the organization as a woman in that case, or as an ethnic minority, and try and broaden their horizons that way. So I think the fact that they're setting up those schemes is in recognition of the power that they have to change the mentor as well, and the insights they get from it.
Mm-hmm. Elizabeth?
Yes, just listening to that. So I'm a coach rather than a mentor, but I'm wondering whether when a mentee is looking for a mentor, they might want to think about the kind of the personal soft skills that the mentor has, because the examples that you're giving sounds to me like kind of humility, openness, as well as perhaps the technical skills and the knowledge of the industry and the being able to put you in touch with people that will advance your career. So yeah, I'm just curious as to those of you who have experience being mentees, what the qualities are that you look for in your mentors in terms of those soft skills.
I think then for me, when I first started here, I really lacked soft skills, and it's something that I still need to work on every day. And we had a conversation once again this weekend in the sauna about my lack of compassion, and that I need to work on being compassionate continuously, and that 1% effort every day is better than trying to do 300% effort once a year, because in 1% a day. So for me, it's someone who's, I think having a mentor to do hard skills is great, but you need someone who can do both hard and soft skills, because you can be so much better for having more soft skills than being hard skills. I think sometimes that's the most important thing, and having someone who can really teach you soft skills but is also good at hard skills becomes a really good mentor. But I think someone without soft skills is just a teacher rather than a mentor.
Can I just come? I'm always reminded when people say, I need to work on this particular skill, of the characters in The Wizard of Oz. If any, are you familiar with the story? One was looking for courage, one was looking for, oh no, I've forgotten them all, but heart and so on. And each thing that they were looking for, as you followed the characters in the story, you realized that they actually already had it.
I think
So
just
I
on that point,
to share that back with you, Alex.
My point as well on that one was one of my best and closest friends is a UK Marine, and I was talking to him, and I think we spent 6 hours on the phone last night just catching up, and he said the most important skill as a Marine isn't to be the fastest, to be the strongest, it's to be the most trustworthy in your team, and that's something that you cannot go to the gym and learn. That's something you have in you. So soft skills, it doesn't matter. I know we're talking about scientific careers, but your soft skills are possibly the most important thing you have. So hard work, ethic, trustworthy, integrity are things that we don't put on CVs and we don't talk about so much. But these really are the things that you can work on your hard skills every day, but soft skills are harder sometimes to realize that you do or don't have.
Going back to your original point, Elizabeth, and one of the mentors that I recently had, only for a short time, but a lot of the conversation were the things that that individual had achieved in their career, and how they basically, if you want to be successful, you've got to recapitulate what the approach that I've taken, which I didn't find particularly useful. I have to say, it's about what be open-minded and listen to what the person's looking for, rather than there's only one way to do this. I actually think it was more of the person was approaching it more from the point of view of coaching, in terms of addressing particular, if you want to do this, you want to achieve A, you got to do B. So it's being completely open and listen to what the person's got to say. And I think that's the thing for me, is that pick your mentor that's prepared to just sit there and listen, not necessarily tell you how to do something.
I think on David's point as well is also finding a mentor who's going to work your strengths to get you. Everyone needs to go from A to B, but what's the journey you're going to take to get from A to B? Because look, if I did A to B by walking, but David wants to build a train track and David knows how to build train tracks, great on him, but I'll walk it because I'm better at walking. So it's finding someone who can actually take your skill set and put them into that and make you go, well, I did it this way, but you do it however you see best, and I'll support you getting there, and I'll put you in the right direction when I see you going off track. If someone's going to go copy and paste what I did, then you really haven't got someone who's listening to what you've done and what you can achieve.
Yeah.
I was just going to sort of add, I think there's also, for me, when I've had mentors myself, and I've found that some managers that I've had, when I've then left, I sort of keep going back to them to sort of get some of their advice, because they were good managers to me. They sort of helped me progress my career. But I'm also, I think, more recently actually starting to seek out some people that perhaps challenge me a little bit, either in my thinking, or actually there is a little bit of sort of friction, but I'm actually finding that that is sort of pushing me. So that sort of challenge is actually quite useful. So I've been sort of going out to people who actually think perhaps a little bit differently than me, because I do find naturally you might be driven towards people who you feel comfortable with, who sort of think like you, who you can sort of relate to. Whereas actually having some people that don't, I think that can really sort of push some of your thinking and get you to see things from a different angle. So yeah, more recently I've deliberately gone out and found a couple of people like that, and I think again that's been really useful. And if anything, the most useful. And I just noticed one of the questions about from Tony, I think, is there a stage in your career where mentoring becomes less relevant? And I think actually that there isn't, but there's something perhaps about you re-establishing, like I said before, that goal about, what do I want to get from this mentoring relationship? And sometimes a mentoring relationship just becomes a nice relationship where you have someone that you can sort of talk to and that feels good. I think there's always trying to find something that challenges you in that relationship. Finding someone that can push you and question some of your thinking, I think is always useful in that.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I think that having an easy relationship, it's really good, because it helps you open and be honest and take a lot from that relationship. But actually someone who might actually get you outside of your comfort zone and make kind of challenging and even conflicting questions that you might have to start digging deeper in yourself to find about that and what you want to do and what you really want to pursue in your career and so on is extremely useful, and something that people might feel a little bit less comfortable with doing, but actually would add a lot of value to that relationship. So that also reminds me of a question that Alex posed when we started catching up about when or how to finish a mentor relationship, a mentor-mentee relationship, when you are actually in between people, and how you do that. So you want to go ahead, Alex?
Yeah, so this one goes back to, we all in Finland, it's always the best conversations come in the sauna. So I sat there with my mentor this weekend and I said to him, like, look, it's time for me to kind of step out from underneath you, and I kind of feel bad. And he goes, no, it means I've done my job right. The fact that you feel confident enough to go, now it's time for you to step out. And it's now it's going to him, look, I now need something else from you, rather than what you've done for the last time period. It's now a time to go, well, what do I want from you next? And it goes to that point about, what do you want from a mentor? Well, if you feel like there's nothing else to learn, you're kind of a bit deluded. There's always something else you can learn. There's always something else, and there's always someone who can help you get there. But it's a case of figuring that out. So for me, it's hard to step it out, and that was possibly the hardest thing I've ever said is, look, it's time for me to step out of your shadow. But I think it's also a good conversation to have, and it's just re-establishing it and going, look, I've got the hard skills, I now need those soft skills, but I need a new mentor to teach me the next step of hard skills. So I now need to go out and find another mentor, which if anyone's got, a position open, if you want to send me your CV, I'll see if you can fit in for my mentorship. It'd be great. But that for me was, it's a hard conversation, but I think it's when you as a mentee go, I think it's that realization that you actually know more than you do. And when you feel confident enough to say to your mentor who's been with you and is close to you and go, I'm ready to take your spot, well, go for it. That's confidence, that is. And that means that they've done their job perfectly, that you can say those words to them. And if they take offense, then they weren't the right person for you.
Elizabeth?
Yes, I'm wondering again here whether there might be a parallel between coaching and mentoring. So at the start of a coaching contract, if you like, as Jeroen was saying, you'll agree goals. And And it sounded like, you can do the same at the beginning of a mentoring contract, agree goals, maybe agree how you'll know when those goals have been achieved. And maybe as with coaching, you agree perhaps you're going to do this for a certain period of time or a certain number of sessions, and then perhaps there'd be a review. So I'm just wondering whether those of you who are more involved in mentoring programs, whether you take that kind of approach, agree goals, agree how you'll be successful, agree perhaps the period of time that you're going to do it before you do a review.
Yeah, so I think in some of the programs we do, and we do tend to run it a little bit like that. Well, sorry, I'm just a little bit because I suddenly saw my screen change. I'm not sure where Maria's.
I think Maria's.
You.
Yeah, she'll be back in a second, I'm sure.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, no, we do, and I think again it does sometimes help. So I think sometimes people feel that having something more formal stifles sort of the mentoring relationship. I think in some ways it actually opens up some opportunities, because filling in that sort of questionnaire that you sort of talked about earlier, forces people to think, what do I really want to sort of get from this? Then you sort of do that matching, you sort of set it up, and it forces you to work towards that goal. So like I sort of said earlier, rather than it becoming just a nice chat you have once a month, actually you sort of think, let's go back to that and say, what were the objectives? Are we meeting those? Are we on the right track? And it allows you to review, to say, a little bit like what Alex was saying earlier, am I the right person, or actually have we met those goals? And is it time for you to go somewhere else? So I think it can be really useful. And again, I think it's just something for you to sort of work out what works for you. Perhaps if it doesn't quite work for you, then it might be something to explore as well, because it might challenge you a little bit more. And then bring that in. But I think it's all about just establishing quite clearly, as you do, especially in coaching as well, what it is that you sort of want to get with each other, and then making that sort of very clear between you. And just to sort of say, I like it, Elizabeth, because clearly I can see sort of your coaching skills, because you tend to ask us questions more than the sort of answering, which I like, and it sort of like stimulates the thinking. So I think that shows some of the skills that a good mentor has as well.
Every relationship in this sense, has got a lifetime. And and as Alex said, there are specific things you need to learn, and there should be no shame in saying, either as a mentor or as a mentee, but actually we've taken this as far as we can now, I need to pick up something else. And as a mentor, again, that's part of the role is to say, actually, I can't help you any longer in terms of where you need to go. I suggest you either reach out to this person who's within my network, or these are the kind of people you need to be looking for, because part of it is helping the mentee build a network and hand somebody over to help them continue. So it's an open relationship, and if you can't help somebody in the area they want to go in, then that's fair. There's no offense taken, kind of thing.
Good. I've seen that there's a question on the chat box, but I've had to change to my cell phone because of connectivity issues. If someone might be able to actually read it up.
Yeah, should I do that?
Yeah.
Yes,
It's from Hector, following up on Jeroen's points on ethnic minorities and their relationship to mentors. So Hector's, been experiencing some issues around this, and he's wondering whether that's anything that anyone on the panel has experienced around. So here it's about difficulties because of his or her background, ethnicity, and yeah, Hector's, this is something you've never experienced before, so I can really sympathize with that. And just wondering if anybody's got experiences that they can share.
I think where this comes in, Hector, is not so much in terms of minorities, but I think the point was really more around this concept of reverse mentoring, whereby mentors are always seen as being the more senior people within the organization, and probably as such, they may be a little bit out of touch. And it's more about everybody has got something to offer. So, don't necessarily stereotype the individual that you want to approach as a mentor. That's what I take from it. And that's obviously answering Jeroen's question for him there. But, don't ever just think, my mentor has got to be, a director or whatever. It could be anybody. If you want to develop your skills in a particular area, then go out and speak to them. There are no barriers. There should be no barriers.
I was just going to say, add on to David's point, is as a mentee, don't let things like that stand in your way. For me, I'm dyslexic, I have ADHD as well. And so going to mentors and saying, oh yeah, by the way, got the reading age of a 6-year-old, so this could make it quite difficult progressing. You've just got to own up to that. And at the end of the day, mine's not visible, so it's quite easy to avoid. But I think as well, you just got to have courage in it, and I haven't experienced it myself, so I can't stand there and say it, but I think it's not going to be something you're going to face. I think you're going to have a good time in the industry, and I hope that there's not people out there like that. So I'm just saying, find someone who looks after you and you'll have a great time in the industry.
Yeah, just I've seen the comment you've added in there. Probably compared to some people on this call, I got a fairly different career path. I joined the industry as what would be called an apprenticeship scheme back in the late 80s. I never went to university. I don't have a PhD, all those kind of things. So I got quite a different career path. Have I hit barriers that I've been through? I think there are perception barriers. Have I let it stop me? No. Because you just get from where you want to be by using the skills that you have. So everybody's got something to offer.
Yeah, I was also going to comment in terms of not minority. I don't consider myself a minority, but for example, I have taken advantage of mentorship that would tell me and teach me and coach me in cultural aspects. So I am from Spain. I've worked in the States. I've worked in UK. There's different ways of working, of communicating, of organizational structures, hierarchy, and so on. And then getting that knowledge from a mentor that would actually guide you how things work in a particular culture or organization has been extremely useful in terms of myself understanding what others were meaning, or making myself communicate in a better way that would actually be better understood. So I think that those things are also quite important when you can have a mentor to guide you through those changes.
Yeah, I just want. I'm sort of Dutch myself, and I've had sort of comments made about not on assertiveness training and saying you don't need to be on assertiveness training. You sort of come across quite aggressive, and it's been useful then to sort of just talk that through with people and like let's pick up on some of those sort of cultural things. I think the point I made, Libur, because I agree with what everyone said, and I think it's actually about not letting that sort of stop you. Definitely. I think I mentioned it because in some, like I said, I worked in the NHS for a bit, and they use it there because I think they do sometimes find that organizationally they have some issues around perhaps whether it's ethnicity or whether it's disability, or that there's different ones where they're now starting to use reverse mentoring to start bringing some of the voices that perhaps sometimes are a bit less heard into the organization more and give them that access to more sort of senior managers. But it's a very formal way of tackling a particular sort of organizational problem, I suppose. So I don't think it's necessarily something that relates to the conversations we're having here, but it was just to sort of make the point, and I think David just made it very nicely, that it's not necessarily looking for the more senior person or the director or always looking up. It's about, what skills do I want to sort of develop and who's going to be able to sort of mentor me and help me with that, rather than always having to sort of go up or look for that sort of experience upwards, but just to sort of explain where the reverse mentoring sort of fits.
Yeah, I was just picking up, Maria, a comment in the chat box from Sarah about you know, most of her mentors having been men rather than women. And, you know, there are some issues that women have to deal with, like perhaps the impact of going on maternity leave and the impact of that on their career. And sometimes it can be valuable to have a female mentor, or indeed a coach can help with those kind of things too. I recently attended the Rising Festival, which is for those of you who are not based in Cambridge, it's an annual festival that's usually face-to-face. This year it was online. The recordings are available as well. And there were some terrific conversations there about mentoring and some really inspirational women available through that network as mentors as well. So I just reference that if anyone's interested.
Just another point as well is, you know, you don't have to just have one mentor. I know that we kind of phrase this like you have one mentor and that's it. You can have multiple mentors and you can pick and choose what they do for each of you. So if you, like Elizabeth's point, if you would like to speak to a woman who has done things that only women can do, then please go speak to them, but also pick and choose and make the best of your situation and speak to people who are going to make you the best person from multiple angles at once. That's the best way of utilize as many people as you can. While you're young, just go for it and just have as many people giving you advice. And then you can bring all that advice and you can pick what you want to take and what you don't want to take. But that's how you bring in multiple layers into your own thought process. And that's a piece of advice I'd give. You know, if you want to get a woman's advice, please do. It's going to be great for women, but as well as men. And that's the point. You need to pick multiple people in one piece that is going to give you a better perception of the whole, what's going on, is what I'm trying to say.
I think just that.
Go, Jaron.
Yeah, no, just to add, I think, and that's obviously maybe sort of what happened to Sarah. I think it's sometimes also just sort of stopping and saying, well, who do I get my advice from? You know, who are the people that I go and talk to when I have an issue? And I completely agree, Alex. You know, you can have more than one mentor, and you might have a mentor for specific, you know, sort of things. But I think it's sometimes worth just sort of stopping and say, actually, who do I talk to about these problems, and how diverse or not sometimes is that group? And I think, you know, I've been surprised myself sometimes how undiverse some of those groups have been, and that's why I've sort of challenged myself to say, actually, I need to sort of sometimes maybe step out of those groups a bit more and get that different perspective, because that will challenge me perhaps a bit more, but ultimately will make me grow a bit more. So I mean that's how I would sort of see that the sort of, whether it's ethnicity or gender, or, you know, don't have to necessarily go out for that, but maybe try and find some of those different opinions or something that will just challenge you maybe a little bit more.
Just extrapolating that idea, you know, finding a different opinion, in some ways that re-emphasizes the need to go outside of your department or to a different part of an organization, or even outside of your organization, because there are no agendas, that there shouldn't be an agenda with the mentoring relationship. So the challenge of finding somebody to mentor you who's quite close, you may feel slightly constrained by what you can say because of any local politics. So I know from my own instance right now, you know, I've moved from the large company is Charles River to a fairly small company, and I'm actively seeking, you know, somebody that can mentor me in that change of role. I'm not going to have to go outside, because there isn't anybody within the organization that can offer me the guidance independently that I need. So again, it's knowing who to identify and how to do that, so that you can speak openly without, and there should be no feedback from the mentor upwards. Elizabeth, do you want to add on to that?
I've just got a question, which is about money. So if you hire a coach, you pay for a coach. If you have a mentor arrangement, do you pay?
I've never been paid to mentor.
No.
But no, it should be I don't think so.
It's a totally free arrangement.
Yeah.
Normally they are, yes.
Yeah, I think there is something we have in the past when I've worked at a different organization than where I am now, but where we set up a mentoring scheme. although there wasn't any sort of payment, and I think that would sort of maybe undermine some of the sort of the mentoring side. There were things to consider there in terms of, you know, travel. Actually, if you choose to have a mentor from the other side of the country, how are you going to meet? And I mean, at the moment, obviously everyone meets on Zoom, and I think Zoom in itself, and I'm conscious we're beginning to run out of time, but presents some different challenges and opportunities to a mentoring, because, you know, you can go anywhere, but you don't have that sort of face-to-face contact. But there are some things to consider in terms of, you know, how much time can you spend on it as the mentor and as the mentee? You know, how far are you willing to sort of travel? Who then bears those costs? And you know, those costs will have to come from somewhere. So do you pay for those personally? So there are some practical things to consider. And I just saw a question pop up about, should you always seek input approval from your manager or boss with respect to finding a suitable mentor? So again, if you're going to be expecting to maybe take time out during your day, or you're going to be traveling during the week, then I would suggest that it's probably something you're going to have to sort of discuss with them, and sort of say why you're sort of doing that. But, you know, at the same time, I think if your boss was really dead against it, or really sort of shut you down, I think that indicates something about sort of that relationship, and that might need a mentoring conversation sort of in itself. So I'd like to think that people are generally quite supportive, but again, that is where some of the practicalities come in terms of just discussing. And again, sometimes having a more formalized approach to mentoring, or being quite clear about, well, this is why I want to have that mentoring relationship, can then help you, you know, get that time and say, you know, this is why I'm doing it, rather than what some people might be to think, well, you're just going to have a coffee with this person. Which is saying, you know, this is why I'm doing it, this is why I'm having these conversations, can help you sometimes, you know, make that case if that is needed.
To flip Rob's question, for those people around the phone here, that manage people, can you ever see a scenario where you would turn somebody down and said, I actually want to shut up, Robs? Can you ever see a scenario where you say somebody, no, you can't have a mentor?
No, I normally encourage people in my team who don't have mentors to actually think about whether they would get an advantage from having such relationship, and then what type of people they would like to talk to, and then try to help them to build those mentorship relationships. I mean, in Charles River, we do have kind of a matching system. So we have a scientific mentorship scheme and a career development mentorship scheme, and then people can choose what type of help they want, and we get those matches. But I would never tell anybody in my team not to have a mentor. I think it's such a wonderful thing to help them.
Picking up on Rob's further point in the box, it does sound to me like if you work for an organization that encourages mentorship and actually helps you to find mentors, whether internally or externally, that sounds like a good organization to be working with.
Okay, I think I'm going to hop back in just as we come up to time at the end of the hour. I'd like to thank the panel and Maria for actually steering that conversation through what I thought was fascinating. And what highlighted to me, I guess, was the overlap and fuzziness at the edges of mentoring, coaching, and networking to get diverse input, and how you formalize or don't formalize that. And I think lots of useful tips and plenty to think about going forward. So thank you for sharing those insights to the panel. This is the end of this session. The next session will be at 10:30 for an hour, looking at investing in some personal R&D, which I think this kind of leads into, in the sense of, I think, Jerome, you brought up during the panel, think about what you want out of a mentoring situation. I guess the personal R&D is working out what do you want to get out of your career and what helps you get there. So I think that's a panel to look forward to, and I hope we'll see many back online for that. In the non-live bits in between, there's on-demand content on the app, looking at conversations in careers where a group of people have shared their thoughts on their own careers, which I found fascinating to listen to. I would encourage others to, for some more insights and tips, I guess, to help their thinking. And of course, there's the one-to-one networking where you can arrange to contact other delegates and seek their advice. And I'm sure the panel are all on the app, and if there's people with questions after that, they'd be more than happy to be contacted. So thank you all for participating, and we'll see you at the next session. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye bye.